Welcome everybody to our third speaker of the morning. I would like to welcome Miriam White to Beit Shemesh. She was a student of Dodi's in Eshkolot, which is also a program that Adina was part of and I was part of in Yerushalayim for Tanakh educators, where Dodi was the dean for many years. And in addition to being a Dodi student, she is an educator. She taught in Central in Queens, she taught in TVA, and she currently teaches in Majeshet Harova and Majeshet Amit. And now, Matan Beit Shemesh. So without further ado, Miriam.
All right, shalom to everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Definitely a big thank you to Melissa and Matan Beit Shemesh. I am a very proud student of Dr. Dodi Tobin, as well as Dr. Abigail Rachel Shalom, and to be teaching in a place where both those women had such foundational impacts is truly humbling, and I'm very grateful. Thank you to the Tobin family, the Fishman family, for sharing Dodi with us. And I was very, very lucky to have Dodi. As mentioned before, I was part of the Eshkolot, the first cohort. I had been teaching at Central for about actually 7 years. And it felt like something was missing, something in my learning, something in my neshama. And I had come and signed up for a Matan summer program that Dodi was running a little bit. And I remember that she pulled me over after the program and she said, "Would you do something like this for the whole year?" And I was like, "Yes, that sounds amazing." And she's like, "Well, there's stuff in the works. I don't know. I'll be in touch. We'll see if we can make it happen." And then that, I believe October, she called me and she says, "It's going to happen, sign up." And from that point on, my life was changed forever. Specifically in the way that I teach and the way that I view teaching. And so much of it is thanks to Dodi and what happened at that year Eshkolot. And what I want to do this morning is to actually learn a piece of Torah that is very famous and something that's a lot of fun to learn. But I remember learning it in Eshkolot, and like I said, it reshaped the way that I view teaching and the way that I thought about how teachers have impact on their students. So if I can take you to the source sheet, we're going to be studying the very amazing and dramatic story of Eliyahu on Har Carmel. And what we see here, just to give a little bit of context before we dive into the psukim, is that Bnei Israel have completely gone array. They're following the Baal, Avodah Zarah. The king at the time, Achav, is a complicated king. Sometimes he shows signs of being good. Sometimes he shows signs of being bad. His wife, for sure, is a horrible influence on him, Izebel. They've kind of launched almost a horrible to say, but a holocaust of prophets. Any prophets that prophesied for Am Yisrael or for Torah or for Hashem are killed and murdered. They go into hiding. And Eliyahu is dealing with this throughout his time as Navi. And what we're going to see in Perek Yud-Chet is that there comes to be a showdown between what Eliyahu represents, the truth, the voice, and ultimately Hashem, versus Achav, Izebel, and everything that they have created to deter the people from serving Hashem. So we look in Malachim Aleph, Perek Yud-Chet, Psukim Tedvav to Lamed Tet. Eliyahu bumps into one of the prophets, Ovadiyahu, and he says, "Go to the king that you're serving, right? Go to Achav and tell him that I want a showdown. Tell him enough of this, of them pushing Am Yisrael to go to follow Baal. I want to set the record straight." And remarkably so, Ovadiyahu kind of is on board with Eliyahu, and he goes to Achav and he tells Achav, "This message was sent to you by Eliyahu." And Achav says, "Fair, let's do it. Let's go. Let's have a showdown." And so the psukim start with Achav gathering all of Am Yisrael to come onto Har Carmel. All the prophets of Baal that they've trained, they bring with them. And Eliyahu is standing in the corner by himself representing Hashem. And the ultimate showdown is about to take place. So we're going to look into Pasuk Yud Zayin. Vayhi kirot achav et Eliyahu vayomer achav alav ha'ata zeh ocher Yisrael. So I almost envision this like as a Westerner, like, you know, you have Achav on one side, and he calls out to Eliyahu and he says, you're the troublemaker for Am Yisrael. You're the one who's causing all this trouble. And Pasuk Yirchet, Vayomer lo acharti et Yisrael ki emata ubeit avicha ba'azavcha mitzvot Hashem v'tilecha achrei ha'ba'alim. And Eliyahu calls back to him. He says, me, I'm the troublemaker. Achav, you're the troublemaker. You're the one who has abandoned your father's house, the traditions, everything we stand for. You've caused the people to get away from Hashem, from the mitzvot. And the two of them were envisioning yelling at each other, one accusing the other. And ultimately, Eliyahu says, let's go. Let's settle the record straight. And he basically asks everyone to gather round. And what will be the ultimate showdown? Eliyahu suggests that they offer a korban, and whichever korban is accepted, that's how they'll know who the true God or gods truly are. And so there are 450 prophets representing the Baal, the Avodah Zarah, and then Eliyahu solitarily on his own representing Hashem. And he says, "Come, let's gather, let's do, and let's finally set the record straight." We jump down to Pasuk Chaf Aleph. Vayigash Eliyahu el kol ha'am. Eliyahu almost has like a last word to the people before the showdown takes place. Vayomer ad matay atem potzchim al shtei hasiifim. How long, Bnei Israel, are you going to be keeping on jumping between both sides? And the Mefarshim tell us that Bnei Israel didn't go completely cold turkey against Hashem. They didn't say, we don't believe in Hashem, we don't believe in anything that we were brought up with. We just want to do it all. We believe in Hashem, and we believe that he's just one of the gods. Baal is also a god. And when Baal is successful, we're rooting for Baal. When Hashem is successful, we root for him. And it's good. We never lose, right? It's a fair weather fan. I don't know. I once upon a time was a Yankee fan, but now I've made Aliyah. I've lost it. But right, if you either root for the Mets when they're down because you're a true friend, or if you're just who's in first place and you're rooting, then you just want to go with the winning team. And Eliyahu calls him out and he says, stop this. You got to make a choice. You got to follow what you truly believe in, and not any of this. Sometimes Baal, sometimes Hashem. And he continues and he says to them, right? Im Hashem Elokim lachu achrav. V'im haba'al lachu achrav. So even if you're going to choose the bad choice, at least be consistent. V'lo anu ha'am oto davar. And the nation couldn't answer him. They couldn't say, you're right. What are we doing? You speak truth here. But Eliyahu calms them out. And the people, they don't really respond. They're more curious about this showdown. They want that proof. They don't want to make the choice of following Hashem until things can be proven to them. Pasuk Chabet, V'yomer Eliyahu el ha'am, Ani notarti navi laHashem levadi, u'niviyei habal arba me'ot v'chamishim ish. He says, look, I'm just standing here alone, a Navi who represents Hashem, while these 450 prophets, they're all serving Baal. And they come and they get the animals ready and they get the korban ready. And first Eliyahu says, you go first. You 450, right? Majority rules, right? So many of you have bought into this mindset that if it's true, then let's see it, prove it. And they come and they set up and they do, and they start doing all of the things that are necessary. And they start doing the huyawayas. They're screaming. They're asking, Baal, answer us. Baal, please show us that we're true and we're faithful and we're dedicated. But Pasuk Chav Zayin comes to tell us, Vayhi b'tzaharayim, Vayatel bahem Eliyahu, Vayomru kiru b'kol gadol ki Elokim hu siach v'chosig lo ki darach lo lai yashen hu v'yakatz. Eliyahu uses humor, and he's basically standing on the side of the mountain and he's saying, come on, guys, scream a little louder. The Baalim, they can't hear you. The gods, they're busy. Maybe they're going to the bathroom. Maybe they're doing something, right? He's being humorous and he's saying, how foolish are you guys? Can't you see that as loud as you yell and as long as you do your little huyawayas, nothing is happening. Come on, see the light here. And they get even more inspired to try to get the Baal to answer them. And they cut themselves and they bang on the drums and they do all the things that are necessary that they think in order for the Baal to answer. And yet, there is no answer from the Baal. There is nothing that ultimately comes to their aid. And then in Pasuk Lamed, it tells us, Vayomer Eliyahu l'chol ha'am, gashu alai, v'igshu kol ha'am. Eliyahu says, come close again. Come close to me. Let me show you. And the nation comes. Vayirpei et mizbeach Hashem ha'arus. And he repairs a broken mizbeach, which is, again, something very interesting. Perhaps a mizbeach that Shaul used many years earlier. Eliyahu was trying to show, let me repair the relationship between you and Hashem. Let me show you how to do it correctly. He takes 12 stones and he assembles them. Also to remind the people, you guys are 12 tribes. Remember your roots. You come from Bnei Yaakov. You come from the diverse and beautiful nation of Am Yisrael. You have so much. Don't go to the other gods. Look what you have within. Look what you have within your traditions. And he brings these 12 rocks and he places them all together. And he says, you are Shiftei Bnei Yaakov, Asher Hayadavar Hashem Alav Lemor Yisrael Yashemecha. Only God and his name should be the ones on your lips. This is what you should do. He builds the rocks. He does the korban, right? And he screams out the tefillah back down in Pasuk Lamed Vav, highlighted for you, Vayhiba lo tamincha, Vaygash Eliyahu Hanavi, Vayomer Hashem, Elokei Abraham, Yitzchak, Yisrael, Hayom Yivada ki ata Elokim b'Yisrael. Today, Hashem, everyone will know, the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzchak, that you are the true and one God. V'ani avdacha, and I am your true servant. Udvaracha, and all your words, asita et kol advarim ha'ela, I have done this. Aneni, Hashem, aneni, please, Hashem, answer me. V'yidu'u ha'ama zeh ki ata, Hashem ha'elokim, please, Hashem, let them know that you are the one true God. Turn their hearts, that you are the only one. Vitipol Eish. And a massive fire came. Vitocha kol ha'olah. It consumed the entire korban. And all the twigs and wood that was necessary to put up the korban. Avanim and all the stones that he settled together, those 12 stones representing Shiftei Yisrael. Viatafar and the dust. Literally nothing. Et hamayim. The mayim was even consumed. Asher ba'alta lechafa. Vayar kol ha'am, and the whole nation saw this incredible situation. V'yaplu al pneihem, they fall on their face. Vayomru Hashem hu ha'elokim. They've seen the light. Hashem is the one true God. Hashem hu ha'elokim. And they call out just like we call out on Yom Kippur when we ask Hashem, Aneni, Hashem, Aneni, Hashem hu ha'elokim. They've seen the light. They're so excited. They see that Hashem is truly their God. And you read this parak and you're like, this is unbelievable. This is incredible. Wow, what drama, what unbelievable miracles in order to prove to the people. And you're almost like, it's like a great book. You can't put it down. So the next parak, you're just turning just to see how the people have repented, how the people are going to serve God now, how the people are going to come to Eliyahu. But it doesn't turn out that way. We turn to Perek Yatet, and what does it say in Pasuk Aleph? Vayagid Achav li'Izevel et kol asher asa Eliyahu. Achav comes back, he's like sweating, he's like looking at his wife, and he's like, honey, sweetie, let me tell you what I just went through. You won't believe it. Eliyahu, remember that prophet we didn't get to killing because we just didn't get around to killing him. It's a big complicated situation. We had a whole gathering. I thought it was cute, showdown, we'd win, we'd embarrass him. What happens is that he came and he totally embarrassed us. And by the way, Hashem hu Elokim. And Izevel's furious. She's like, what? This is crazy. Everything I've worked for. I don't believe that there's just a Hashem. There is a Hashem, but we need to see him in the whole concept of our idol worship and in Baal. We got to get rid of this guy. Machar, tomorrow I'm going to kill him. And they put a death warrant against Eliyahu. Not really the way that we'd expect things to go. We'd expect things to be that there was this moment of light, this moment of truth that the people would say, we're going to be on Eliyahu's side. And even if it took a while for Achav and Izebel to see that, we'd expect maybe somewhere along the lines that they would see it too. But for sure, Izebel has just become stronger in her commitment to get rid of anything that is truth and anything that represents Hashem. And it seems to be that the people are behind Achav and Izebel, that they don't have this unbelievable, inspirational moment that lasts. Maybe in that few moments where they saw that and they screamed out, Hashem hu Elokim, But when push came to shove, and when ultimately Zevel says, let's kill Eliyahu, the people were like, yeah, let's kill Eliyahu. Let's get rid of this voice in our head that keeps telling us to do the right thing. It's easier to do the thing that we think is the right thing. And ultimately, Eliyahu now is completely deflated. And he doesn't know what to do because also there's a death warrant against him. So what does the pasuk say? That he decides to run, pasuk gimel, vayar, vayakam, vayelech, el nafsho. He runs for his life. Vayavo be'er sheva asher lihuda v'yinachet na'aro sham. And he goes down to Be'er Sheva, he leaves his servant there, and he continues on his journey. Now, what's fascinating and what I'd like to do in this parak a little bit is to recognize that as Eliyahu is running, he himself is going through a very personal journey. He's really had this incredible event that just happened to him in Har Carmel. And now what's going to transpire is Eliyahu has to kind of make sense of what's going on, not just us, the students of Tanakh, to understand what's going on, but we're going to follow along Eliyahu Navi. And geographically, as the pasuk says, he runs for his life all the way down to Be'er Sheva. Har Carmel, as we know, many of us might have done a tiyul in Har Carmel. It's personally one of my favorite tiyulim here in the country, all the way up close to Haifa. And to now travel a far distance all the way down to Be'er Sheva, you can imagine this was a long journey. Eliyahu had a lot of time to think, a lot of time to process what was going on. One of the things that I think is fascinating as we are going to go through this parak is that we're going to see many echoes of various different people and personalities in Tanakh that come out from the words themselves that I think represent what Eliyahu has to kind of process and what Eliyahu is thinking in his mind. And as the student of Tanakh, by seeing these echoes, we kind of fill out the experience that Eliyahu is having. So if you look at the first echo based on that bolded pasuk that I read, Vayar, Vayakam, Vayelechet nafsho, that as he sees, he gets up and he goes for his life to Be'er Sheva, and he leaves his servant Sham. There is an interesting echo to that of Abraham Avinu right before he does the Akedah. Right, if you look at Breshit, Parachapet, Psukim Dalet and Hey, it says, Vayom HaShlishi, on the third day, Vayisa Abraham et einav, Vayar, he sees the Tamakom, he sees where he has to go, Merachok, it's in a distance. Vayomer Abraham el Na'arav, Shivu lachem po, you stay here. Right, Imachamor v'ani v'hanar nechad, ko v'nishtachaveh v'nashuva aleichem. Perhaps this echo is kind of showing us that Eliyahu Hanavi almost feels like Abraham Avinu when he's about to do the greatest sacrifice of all time. Abraham says, there are no limits to you, God. I will do anything and everything for you. I will do everything and anything to show that I am committed to you. Even if I leave everyone in my life here and I have to go on my own, I will do it. And I'm willing, I'm ready to make that sacrifice. And we see that even Abraham Avinu, after the Akedah, even though he's not asked to actually sacrifice his son, it says, Vayashav Abraham el Na'arav, he returns back to the young man, they go to Be'er Sheva as well. After this moment, they also need to process what takes place. They also need to take in their mission. And so this kind of echo that we see with Eliyahu going down to Be'er Sheva as he's running away for his life kind of shows us Eliyahu is a prophet who believes he's sacrificing it all for God, that the people still are not listening, and yet he wants to go and do and show that he is committed to God himself. If we turn back to the psukim in Melachim, what happens to Eliyahu once he gets to that desert area in Beersheba? Pasuk Daled, right underneath the source, echo number 1, it says, V'hu halach b'midbar. Right, Beersheba is that tipping point right before we get into the desert. It's the last portion of Nachla Yehuda. So he moves from that place and he goes straight into the desert. Derech yom v'yavo v'yeshiv tachat rotem. Achad v'yishalat nashuv lamot v'yomer ravat Hashem kach nafshi ki lo tov anochi me'avotai. And as he's traveling in the desert, he finds this bush, this rotem, a type of like shrubbery, and he sits under it. And as he sits under it, he can't go on any longer. He goes to God and he says, just kill me. What good is my life? What good is it that I'm trying to serve you, God, and trying to change the people, and they're not willing to listen? Just take my life. Vayishka vayishan tachat rotem. He falls asleep under this bush, this rotem. V'hinei ze malach nogea bo v'yomer lo kum achol. And ultimately, even though Eliyahu just wants to die there and he wants to finish his mission, he no longer wants to continue. He falls asleep, maybe hoping that he won't wake up. And the Malach says, get up, Eliyahu, come on, eat. Stop throwing a tantrum, get up. And the second echo that I want to mention at this point is that when we think about a prophet who's running away from his mission and a prophet who no longer wants to continue because he doesn't believe in the mission anymore, right? We almost come to think immediately of Yonah, right? The story that we'll be reading on Yom HaKippurim, the idea that a Navi is charged to go and serve God, and yet he feels that his mission, right, is not going to yield anything. Or if it's going to yield something, it's not going to yield the things that he wants to see. Right? Yonah is upset that if he actually gets Nineveh to do tshuva, then ultimately what's going to happen is that Hashem will save them, and that he knows in the future that they will come to be a major enemy to Am Yisrael. And Yonah doesn't want anything to do with this mission. I have my values, I have my beliefs, God. How can you make me do something that feels so antithetical to that which I stand for? And so if you look at Yonah, Parak Daled, Pasuk Aleph through Chet, also, Yonah tries running away from his mission. We know that Hashem keeps putting things in his path to ultimately fulfill his mission. But then once Yonah does it, the Psukim tell us, Pasuk Aleph, Ve'iral Yonah ra'a gedola v'yacharla. Right? Yonah's feeling really bad. He's feeling upset about what happens. Pasuk Bet, Ve'itpalel Hashem idavin segar v'yomer, Ana Hashem, halo ze divri ad hayoti ad mati, al kein kadmati lebrach tarshisha, ki adati ki ata el chanun berachum merachapayim berav chesed v'nicham el hara. He says, I knew that this was going to happen, that I would go to Tarshish, that I would have to tell them to do tshuva, and that ultimately I know you, God. You're a chanun berachum. You are merciful and you're compassionate and you're graceful. So obviously you're going to forgive them. But I knew that this was going to be bad. I don't want this. And he says, Ata Hashem kachna nafshi, kill me, take me out of my mission, take me out of what you want me to do. Better to have death than my life. And ultimately we see that Yonah leaves and he goes, and he himself also finds a type of tree, the kikayon in his case, and he's so happy to find this kikayon right down in the bottom in Pasuk Zayin. It says that he finds Vayismach Yonah kikayon simcha gedolah, and it creates this happiness, and he's so happy. But it's a very hot day, and we know that the heat destroys this kikayon. It dries itself up, and ultimately Yonah is distraught. Yonah is completely, that one thing that kept me going in this mission that I'm so against, that I don't want to be part of. Ultimately, he also asks God, please God, just kill me. Why are you making me do this? I'm not your man. Better death than my life. So Eliyahu feels that sacrifice that Avram Avinu shows. He feels that kind of desperation that Yonah felt when his mission wasn't going the way that he felt. And then the Psukim continue in Parak Yutet of Malachim. The Malach had just told him, get up and eat. And now Eliyahu, he listens to the Malach, he drinks, he eats, he regains the energy that he needs. And Pasuk Zayin says, Vayashav Malach Hashem Shenit, the Malach comes back after he's rejuvenated himself. And basically he says, Vayakam ve'achav vayishteh ve'yelech b'koach achila hahi 40 yom v'arba'im laila ad har ha'elokim chorev. He continues to go on the journey 40 days and 40 nights until he gets to the mountain of Chorev. Now, one of the very obvious echoes when we hear Har Chorev, right? We know Har Chorev to be Har Sinai. And we see that not only are we going to see an echo of Har Sinai, but to even go one step further, who's the first person to come to Har Sinai, or Har Chorev, I should say? Moshe. And so echo number 3, we see that when Moshe is a shepherd for Yitro, it says, Moshe hayaroet son, Yitro, Chotno, Kohen Midian, he is watching the sheep, and one wanders off in the desert and he follows on. And ultimately he comes into the Har HaElokim Choreva. He comes to Har Chorev himself. And this is where Moshe is going to have his revelation with God. This is where he's going to be appointed the leader, and he is going to be told to go forward. And in essence, these psukim are almost hinting to us through this echo, this might be Eliyahu's big revelation. Eliyahu might be disappointed about what happened at Har Carmel and how the people took it. Ultimately, we see that Eliyahu feels completely desperate. He doesn't even want to continue on in this mission. He feels uninspired. He feels like there's nothing else to do here but to die. And ultimately, here we see that maybe this could turn around for Eliyahu. Maybe he could be that Moshe at Har Chorev who sees the revelation, who sees God, who sees clearly his mission and what he's supposed to do. And the Yalkut Shimoni also picks up on these similarities, and they actually compare the idea that Moshe and Eliyahu are very similar prophets. And what the Yalkut Shimoni says is as follows: Nivyei ha'olah Hashem ze Moshe, Nivyei nishmar ze Eliyahu. Atamotzi shnei Nivyei mandu Yisrael mishifto shel Levi. The Yalkut Shimoni says we see that there are two prophets that come from Levi, from Shevet Levi. Moshe, Rishon, he's the first one. The Eliyahu hu achron. Ushnehem goalim et Yisrael b'shlichut, and both of them are going to bring the geula, right, for their people in their mission, in their shlichut for Am Yisrael. Moshe ga'ala mitzrayim. Moshe took us out of Mitzrayim. V'atal hakol v'yishlacha al Paro. That's why he sends him go to Paro and take out the people. The Eliyahu la'atid lavo. Eliyahu will be the prophet in the future to take Bnei Israel out of their galut into geula. As the pasuk says, "Hine anochi sholeach lachem et Eliyahu hanavi." So the Yalkut Shimoni sees that this echo is extremely strong. Not only is Moshe the one who first comes to Har Chorev, which to be Har Sinai, but Eliyahu now in this moment goes to Har Chorev, maybe to have his revelation, to have his re-inspiration to his mission and to who he wants to be. And yet we also see that Yalkut Shimoni says, and their missions will be the true statement for the future, that as Moshe got the people out of Galut, Eliyahu will also get the people out of Galut. And the Yalkut Shimoni continues to show so many similarities between Moshe and Eliyahu. Shavim zela zel lechol davar. The Yalkut says Moshe and Eliyahu completely comparative throughout their experiences. As it says, Moshe nikra ish ha'elokim. Moshe is known as the man of God. Eliyahu nikra ish ha'elokim. Moshe ala lamala, Eliyahu ala lamala. And so the comparisons continue again and again and again. But what is the conclusion? Does Eliyahu have the same type of revelation that Moshe has, where he takes on the mission that God puts him on to go save the people and to become the leader that we all hope him to be? And what does the pasuk say back in Parak Yutet, pasuk Yud? Or I'll start even pasuk Tet. Vayavosham el ha'ma'ara. Eliyahu gets to this cave in Har Chorev. Vayilin sham. He lies down there. V'hinei davar Hashem alav. And the word of Hashem comes to him. And what does God say to him at the beginning? Malacha po Eliyahu. What are you doing here, Eliyahu? What's the matter? What's going on? So Eliyahu defends himself and he says, Vayomer kano kaniti l'Hashem. I am a jealous, zealous prophet. I'm all about you, God. I want to make this world a better place. I want to show the people the light. I want to show them that you are God. But what have they done? They've abandoned you, God. Azvu britcha, they've gone against your brit. They're not the same people that they were, Bnei Israel. You should see the mizbachot that they build for their gods, the neviim that they kill. What am I supposed to do? Please take my life, finish it. I'm not into this mission any longer. So Hashem says, okay, we got a lot of work to do here. We have a lot of inspiring to do for you, Eliyahu. So he says, Vayomer, get out. Say, V'amadata b'har, stand at the edge of the mountain, L'fnei Hashem, before God. V'hinei Hashem over, God will pass over you. You'll have this revelation. You'll see God. You'll see the light. And what happens? V'ruach gedolah, this massive wind comes. V'chazak, v'farek harim. We see that there is earthquakes. Mishaber salim lifnei Hashem, and the wind is not where you find God. Lo beruach Hashem, v'char haruach rash, lo berash Hashem. And in the earthquake, in the noises that are following the wind, there's also no sign of God anywhere. V'char harash, ish lo ba'esh, a huge fire, but God is not found in that fire. So he's really being consumed by this all-encompassing sensory experience. The wind, nothing. The noise, nothing. The light, the fire, nothing. Kol mama daka. But in a still and steady, simple voice emerges, and Eliyahu sees God. Eliyahu experiences Hashem. And ultimately, Pasuk Yud Gimel, it says, Kishmo Eliyahu, when he hears that small, still, very soft voice, Vayel panav adarato, he can't bear to watch it. He takes his cloak, his mantle, and he puts it over his face, Vayatze, and he goes, Vayamod petach ha'ma'ara, v'hinei elav kol vayomer, malacha po Eliyahu. So, as good teachers know, check for understanding, right? So he asks him the same question he asked him before. So now, Eliyahu, what are you doing here? Now Eliyahu is told, not in the wind and not in the noise and not in the fire, none of that is where God is, but in the cold mama daka. And ultimately, what is Eliyahu going to answer when finally Hashem says, so now what, Eliyahu? What are you doing here? Now do you understand your mission? Pasuk Yudalid, Vayomer. He's not a changed man. He's still saying, I'm still this zealous and jealous person. That's who I am, God. I get your message, but that's not me. Who am I? I'm Eliyahu. I'm fiery. I'm passionate. I want the people to know they're wrong. I want the people to stand for truth, and what they're doing is not true. I'm not doing this, God. God, I am still the prophet who I am. Kano kaniti la Hashem. So Pasuk Tedvav, Hashem looks at him and he says to him, okay, Lech shuv l'darkacha midbara, go down to the mountain, to the desert. Demesech ubato meshchata et Hazael melech al Aram. And he basically says, I want you to go and I want you to appoint someone else. Changing of the guards, Eliyahu. If you can't be that prophet, we need a new prophet. And the new prophet, who is it going to be? Pasuk Tet Zayin, go, Timshach lemelech Yisrael ve'et Elisha ben Shaphat. Elisha ben Shaphat, he will be the next prophet. Go and anoint him. And ultimately, Eliyahu listens. He's a faithful servant of God. And he goes on his mission in Pasuk Yuted, Vayilech Misham Vayimsat Elisha ben Shaphat. He finds this Elisha, V'hu choresh Shnei Masar Smadim Lefanav, V'hu B'Shnei Masar Vayavor Eliyahu Alav Yishlach Adarto Alav. He sees him, and ultimately he extends his mantle over him, his cloak over him. He's showing him that he's the one. He's going to be the next prophet. Elisha is a man of the farm at the moment. He's taking care of the different animals. He kind of leaves the animal for a second. He runs after Eliyahu, which kind of shows us that Eliyahu kind of distinguishes him by putting his mantle over him and saying, you're the next prophet. But Elisha doesn't get any more information. Eliyahu's kind of almost, you can imagine this Navi, muttering to himself, moving on, saying, I can't believe this, I can't believe in Israel. And Elisha's like, wait, Eliyahu, wait 1 second, wait for me 1 sec. Please let me just give a kiss to my father and to my mother. Then I can go after you, Eliyahu. I just can't just leave. I just can't follow you. I need to say bye. I'm a loving son to my parents. Let me say bye. Go do what you need to do. And what it tells us is, not only does Elisha go to kiss his mother and his father goodbye, but he takes from the choicest of the meats, he cooks them, he makes them, and he makes a goodbye party for his loving people in his life. And then only after that, he moves and he goes towards Eliyahu and he follows him. And what's interesting is we see very opposite types of leadership here. Eliyahu, the fiery, zealous prophet, and Elisha, almost this kind, very soft prophet, someone who wants to go kiss his mother and his father, who wants to have a party with people. And he's the next one to take over, perhaps more of that cold mamadaka, that very still and soft voice that takes place. Now, when I read and heard this Tarek, I remember probably reading it as a young girl, probably when I studied Melachim Aleph for the first time in elementary school, and it's filled with drama. But it was only when I went to Ashkelon and I saw it as a young adult, someone who had been engaged with teaching, that when I saw this, it reshaped the way I thought about certain things. In teaching, oftentimes we think we got to get through to our students. What do we got to do? We got to big light and sound shows. We got to get them so excited. We got to do the Shabbatons, and we got to do the singing, and we have to do everything and anything to get them inspired. And I found that to be true. In my 7 years before I went to Eshkolot, that was my life. I threw myself into that form of teaching, and it worked, and it was great, and it was a special, special time. But I started to notice something. I started to notice that as time went on, as you moved away from your teacher and those experiences and all of those things that came along with it, life happens, and there's so much that gets thrown at you. And those moments of inspiration just didn't last the same way. And I was thinking to myself, what is it? What is it that makes things last? What's going to cause a student to come back to a teacher years later, after that awesome Shabbaton and after that amazing kunzitz that you sit with? How's that student going to come back to that teacher and say, listen, I'm in my dating years now, I'm struggling, can you help me? I'm married now. talk to me about Shalom Bayis. I'm trying to balance career. I'm trying to balance family. What do I do? Students oftentimes feel time has passed and those inspirational moments have gone. But what is it that brings a student back to a teacher? And when I heard this, when I heard that Eliyahu Hanavi also, he came, he inspired the people were so far off, and they were calling out Hashem Hu Elokim, but it only lasted just for that little bit. And that Hashem actually had to come to teach Eliyahu. Eliyahu, you want to make an impact. Eliyahu, you want to be the prophet that Bnei Israel deserve? Listen to the cold mama daka. Listen to the simple. Listen to that soft voice. Listen to that consistent voice that a cold mama is. And it's in that everyday mundane kind of showing up every single day that cold mama daka is going to really penetrate. And that's where you'll find Hashem, and that's what you're going to find that connection. And because of so many parallels, as we saw in the Psukim, specifically with Moshe and with Har Chorev and Har Sinai, I thought about it, and I even remember hearing this spoken about. I'm originally from West Hempstead, New York, so our Rav, Rabbi Yehuda Kalamer, Alav Shalom, he used to say the following. He used to say, if you look at Har Sinai when we received the Torah, the first time around it was a failed experience. And I thought about that, and I thought about that in context with Eliyahu's story at Har Carmel, and you look in Shemot, Perek Yud Tet, right, Psukim Tet Zayin to Chav Daled, and what does it say? Vayi b'yom hashlishi, v'yot haboker, v'yu kolot brakim hanan kaved halhar, v'kol shofar chazak me'od. The Har Sinai kind of setting is almost just as dramatic, if not some can argue more dramatic than Har Carmel. You're at the foot of the mountain on the third day, and you're hearing the voice, the kolot of the lightning and the thunder, and there is a cloud over the mountain. The kol shofar, and the voice of the shofar is blasting. Chazak me'od. It is so loud, and the whole nation is trembling. They don't know what to do with themselves. If they're inspired, they're inspired. And Moshe goes out to the people, and the trumpets are blaring, and the shofar is blaring. And Pasuk Yud-Chet, Har Sinai Ashan Kula, the whole mountain is filled with smoke. Again, a sensory experience that will inspire the masses. And indeed, they are inspired. And they say, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will follow. And yet, as we know, as the story goes, only a few moments later, when trouble started to hit them, when they realized that things weren't so simple, things weren't as clear-cut, Moshe tarried a little bit. He didn't come back as soon as he said, or they calculated wrong. Wait, where's our leader? What are we supposed to do? They're bowing down to a cow. They're bowing down to a Chet Egel. They're doing something that goes so against everything that the Har Sinai experience was. But ultimately, we have to ask ourselves, was Har Sinai successful? When we first got the Torah, did that penetrate our souls enough to say that we are really committed Na'aseh v'nishma to God? But we know that it's really at the second time that we get the Torah. Moshe realizes the first time, you can't have this, and he breaks the luchos. And he says, we need to think of a different method. And the second method, on Yom HaKippurim, when we're granted forgiveness, and ultimately Moshe goes up again to receive the second set of luchos, right? It's the Avor Hashem al Panav. Hashem passes over, and we call out Hashem, Hashem, Kel Racham, B'chanu Nerach Apayim, V'Rav Chesed, V'Emes, Noser Chesed Lafim, Noser Abom, B'Fesher, B'Chatav, V'Nakeh. And it's in that very simple moment, no sounds, no lights, no drama, but in that moment that really Torah is passed on from generation to generation the second time around. I happen to be a Talmidah of Rabbi Lam as well. I went to Yeshiva University High School for Girls. I taught at Yeshiva University for Girls. I went to Stern. I had my master's in Jewish education from Azrieli. So to say the least, I really grew up in the YU. My parents had gone to YU as well. My sister married Rabbi Barat Lam's grandson, so a lot of connections to Rabbi Lam, and I happen to love his teachings. And I came across this piece when he talks about Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a rededication of the Beit HaMikdash, and yet the big question comes: why do we have such a big and festive holiday for the rededication of the Beit HaMikdash? We actually don't have a holiday when the Beit HaMikdash was actually built, right? If you ask most people, when was the Beit HaMikdash actually built, and is that a significant day in the Jewish calendar? Most people say, ooh, that's like a good question for one of those Tanakh BQ things, and I don't really know. And Rabbi Lam asked, why is it that the second time around, when it wasn't as illustrious, why is it that we celebrate that rededication and not the first dedication. So just to read, just because his words are so beautiful, this comes from an essay called Variations on the Hanukkah Theme. He talks about what we just spoke about in terms of Har Sinai and Har Carmel, and he says the following: when God first gave the Torah to Israel, it was the most dramatic setting, thunder and lightning and the universal silence, and then the loud boom of the first commandment. More than 600,000 people gathered about the smoking Mount Sinai. But while the drama of Matan Torah is appropriate to a large public, the slow and hard labor of Kiyum Torah, the observance of Torah life in all the nooks and crannies, must go on incessantly and without fanfare in the private life of each individual Jew. It was because Jews forgot that the tablets were broken, and Moses had to ascend Mount Sinai a second time, but now without any theophany, without any admiring yet stunning audience, and without the dramatic sound and light effects. It was the soft, ongoing labor of Tadir, not the celebratory flourish of Pirsum. Ordinary Jews then learned how Torah must be observed punctiliously in their own lives, and that is why these tablets were not destroyed. The prophet Elijah also had to learn this lesson. Remember his challenge to the priests of the Baal atop of Mount Carmel. What powerful drama, with the bearded, mantled prophet of God appearing out of the desert to take hundreds of idolatrous priests, challenging them to evoke the Baal to bring fire down and consume the sacrificial flesh. How thrilling, miraculously was that prayer of Elijah as the multitudes gasped at the sudden bolt of fire of the heavens. The consuming of the sacrifice, the prostration of the masses as they called out Hashem Hu Elokim. God performed the miracle before all people because it was didactically necessary and an opportunity for educational experience. It deflected them from the Baal worship and brought them to Torah. Pirsum Nisa belongs to an assembled public in front of masses, in crowded synagogues. But do you recall what happens immediately after to Eliyahu? The chapters that follow in the end of the beginning of the second book of Kings, he flees from the evil king and queen. Achav and Izebel hide out in the desert alone and solitary, no other human in sight. I am alone here, he complains to God. Elijah had to be overly impressed and thus spoiled by Pirsum Nisa. The histrionic, the admiring crowds, the mass demonstrations, he could no longer be satisfied with Tadir, the ongoing, uneventful task of prophecy without the crisis-to-crisis living, the daily grind, the regular and grueling task of serving God alone in privacy. That is why God chose a prophet, the whole panorama of dramatic, mighty natural phenomenon, the mighty winds, the powerful thunder, the fire. To each of these, God proclaims to Elijah, not in the fire is God found, not in the same for the stormy winds and the thunder, not in the spectacular can God always be found. Where then? In the cold mamadaka, in the still, steady, quiet, simple, regular labor of character building, of living honorably and honestly, and perceiving the will of God in prosaic daily life, the worship of God in the mode of Tadir. And it's when I put all these things together, I said to myself, this is an unbelievable, almost mandatory learning for any teacher that goes on into the field. Yes, there are moments when we need to inspire our students with these big and amazing, inspiring Shabbatonim and kumzits and movies and whatever it is that the creativity of the minds of education today allows for people to get connected in this way. And those inspirational moments last. But it's every teacher that has to learn this, that ultimately to make the most impactful and most lasting impact on our students, that inspiring change in our lives. It's that the cold mamadaka, it's that consistency, it's that being there every day. It's the caring about the personal of that individual. It's those small moments, not the Shabbatones, but come to my Shabbos table. It's the ability to laugh with the student. It's the ability to show the beauty of Torah, not in class, but as you're saying hello to one another in the hallway or bump into each other in the street and you exchange just a few things that you're learning. And it's those small moments that I think that ultimately Eliyahu stands for. I believe that there's a beautiful Hasidic story about Eliyahu Hanavi that I think brings this out a little bit, which has become one of my favorite stories to talk about, where we know that Eliyahu, at the end of his life, he gets swept up into the chariots of the heavens, and he never dies, but that he ultimately comes down on earth to help those in need in whichever way he needs. And the legends have it that wherever it is that you need Eliyahu, Eliyahu will show up to save you. So there's a Hasidic tale with a man named Yankala. Yankala is a very, very rich man. He has all the money in the world, and he thinks money can buy him anything. So he says to the Rebbe, he says, Rebbe, tell me something. I know Eliyahu lives here on this earth, and he shows up when necessary. Tell me, where can I find Eliyahu Hanavi? So the Rebbe thinks to himself, he says, Yankala, it's a very expensive endeavor. I don't know that I could really tell you where he is without spending some money. And Yankala says, Rebbe, you know, I have so much money. I'll give any money you need. Tell me, I want to meet Eliyahu Hanavi. I want to have this experience. And so the Rebbe says, okay, I want you to do the following. On Erev Shabbos, I want you to go to the market. And I want you to buy the best challah and the tastiest wine and the best chicken and the best desserts. And I want you to pack up a wagon so filled with so much food. And I want you to go through the city. You'll see the woods on the way, cross through the woods. You'll see a stream. There'll be a bridge. Go further and further and further. And ultimately, you'll start seeing a small village, pass through the village. And there'll be a small cottage at the end, at the outskirts of the village. Go there, and that's where Eliyahu resides. Yankel is so excited. He goes to the market. He buys the most amazing foods. He packs up his wagon. It's so heavy, he has to get 2 horses to pull the whole wagon. And he sets off on Erev Shabbos. And he's going through the woods, and he crosses the stream, and he gets through the city, and he looks at his watch, and he says, it's getting close to Shabbos. Better meet Eliyahu Hanavi, come back in time to be with my family. And as he's going through, he sees that little cottage that the Rebbe was talking about. He's so excited. And he comes and he pulls the wagon through, gets himself all nice and ready to meet Eliyahu Hanavi, walks up to the door, doesn't really look very nice, decrepit, but he says, Eliyahu, what does he need? He's not a physical man, he's a spiritual man. Okay, and he knocks on the door, and he's waiting, and his heart is beating, and the door opens, and it's a young man, a very thin man, not the way he had expected Eliyahu to look, with a big white beard, and, you know, kind of something with a light with his face. And Yankala says, Eliyahu! And the man goes, oh, Moshe, sorry, my name is Moshe. What? Is there any other house around here? And Moshe says, sorry, we live on the outskirts. There's really no hearts around here. And Yankala is he's so confused. He's thinking to himself, did I not write down the directions right? Oh my God, this is so embarrassing. And Moshe says, listen, I'm looking at the time. It's almost Shabbos. There's nowhere to go. I'm not a rich man, but please stay with us, Shabbos. Stay with us. And Yankala is so angry, but then he reminds himself, I have the wagon. So he says, Moshe, you're being so kind to me. I'm sorry about this whole mistake. It's embarrassing. It's something I'll explain to you another time. I have this whole wagon full of food. It's going to go to waste. Please let me, at least for the kind hospitality you're showing me, let me give you this food. And Moshe's eyes are coming out of his head, and he opens the door, and 2 little children run out. And they start looking at the wagon, and they start dipping their fingers in the cakes, and they're dancing around the wagon. And Moshe's wife comes out with tears in her eyes. She had prepared a potato and maybe a little bit of some old chicken that she had. That was the whole Shabbos meal. And now she's looking, her children are finally going to eat. Everything's going to be amazing. This Shabbos is going to be wonderful. And Yankala and Moshe go, and they go to shul, and they daven Nachadodi, and they come, and they have this most wonderful meal, and the kids are holding their stomachs. Oh, we can't eat anymore. This is just so good. And everyone goes to sleep happy and satisfied. And after Shabbos, Yankala is thinking to himself, this was really an inspiring Shabbos. This was wonderful. This was so great. Oh man, but when I meet that Rebbe, I'm going to tell him off. I'm going to tell him, how dare you? How dare you send me on this wild goose chase? I can't believe he didn't let me meet Eliyahu Hanavi. And Yankala says bye to Moshe, to the kids, to the wife, and he continues on his journey, Motzei Shabbos, back home. And as the door shuts, the kids run over and they say, Abba, who was that Yankala? Who was that man that came to our door? And he looks at them and he says, that was Eliyahu Hanavi. Mm-hmm. And I love that story because I think that it empowers each and every one of us to find those small moments in life, those cold mama dakaz, those abilities to be an Eliyahu Hanavi for anyone and everyone that we come in contact with, that we have the ability to look at someone and say, how do I fill a need that you need? How is it that I can teach you and I make an impact on you that is a Kol Dmama Daka. It's not the big and the illustrious in the way that we all kind of think about it, but it's that being there for them. It's that present moment that I think is ultimately what Eliyahu Hanavi really teaches us. And I think that the legends that exist with Eliyahu Hanavi, whether he comes at our Seder table, the Seder table also, it's a meal that we share with our family, but what it represents, it's the passing of tradition from generation to generation. That's where the Kol Dmama Daka is. That's where Eliyahu shows up. And he has to learn because he wasn't ready to accept it in his lifetime, right? But he sees it and he comes to every Brit of every boy because he's being shown the Kol Dmama Daka, the consistency, the steadiness, that small voice that every Jewish family, when blessed with a baby boy, comes to do a Brit, to be part of the covenant with Hashem, that the impact of the Torah resides in them, in the commitments, in those small moments, and in that consistency that Eliyahu learns. Bnei Israel are committed, Bnei Israel are inspired, and they have that. Dodi. And here, there's not a chance I could talk about Dodi without crying, so I'm just going to go through it. I'll look like a mess and I'll have my tissue afterwards. Dodi was larger than life. I remember that smile and that electricity, that ability to just make so much of our lives so fun. I'm only quoting it because Mark said it. She was a goof. and my cohort was professional goofs. we had the best time with Dodi, and it was singing, and it was the Shabbatonim, and it was everything, and it was inspiring. Trust me, it was inspiring. But the reason I'm crying today is because I missed that Kol Dmama Daka. I missed that consistency that Dodi was. Dodi was a master teacher, and she could get you excited. And we made fun of her at the Purim spiel. We did the this and the screaming, and even my teaching is influenced by the way that Dodi taught. But really what made Dodi to us, so beloved to us, was that Dodi was that Kol Dmama Daka. She asked us, how are you doing? I was already in my 30s when I was here in Eshkolot. I had a hard time with dating, and she would constantly ask me, not in a prying way, she just really wanted to know. When I went back to teach in New York, she always asked, how's the teaching going? How's it going? How did Eshkolot? It was a consistent presence. When you texted her, she answered back. She was just always there. She knew how to be that Eliyahu Hanavi for people in their lives. She kind of came out of nowhere and was able to provide that for us. And I feel that that's why she was such a beloved teacher, is because she was the full package. She had the inspiration, she could be charismatic, and she could do the most wondrous things. But really what made Dodi and that teacher that I loved so much was that steady voice, that still voice. It was her softness and in the way that she interacted with us and taught us and empowered us as her students how to teach others. And I think all of us, not just my cohort, the second cohort, the third cohort, I don't know how many cohorts have come from that time. I think that those are the most amazing parts of what we came out with, that we were inspired by the amazing Torah Eretz Yisrael, but we were also inspired by the Kol Dmama Daka. And the nice thing that I've heard once before is that, and again, I'm no scientist here, but I hear that echoes continue their reverberations, even if you can't literally hear them. A sound travels on, it just becomes so expanded that it doesn't ring in your ear, but that those reverberations somewhere in the universe continue. And I believe that Dodi's Kol Dmama Daka is continuously living on for Arichos Yamim, for her parents, for Mark, for her children, and in the Torah that she taught, and in every one of her students that she had. That Kol Dmama really lives within each and every one of us, and it really has reshaped the way I think so many of us educators have approached Torah and have approached inspiring the next generation. To conclude, because I am aware that Dodi loved 70s music, so I'm pretty sure that I think Beatles qualify, right? That they went through that before my time, to be honest, but still like the song a tremendous amount. Right? Let it be, and I'm sure if Dodi was here with me, we'd be holding each other like this, singing Let It Be together. But when the brokenhearted people living in a world agree, there will be an answer. Let it be. For though they may be parted, there is still a chance that they will see. There will be an answer. Let it be, oh, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom.
that Kol Dmama Daka, that soft way of teaching, that soft way of connecting others to God, let it be. May Miriam Dodi, Bas Yehuda Leib, and Chana Yocheved have an Aliyah Neshama. May we continue to learn from that Kol Dmama Daka, and may we make an impact. And just to conclude, just because it's Yamim Noraim, we'll say Natan Tokef definitely in the Ashkenazi tradition. And it's there that it says in the Kol Dmama, it comes down in the Natan Tokef that the Shofar Gadol will sound, but the Kol Dmama Daka will also be sounded on Yamim Noraim. And in that moment, I will think of Dodi, I will think of her Torah. May Hashem answer all our tefillas l'tova. May we make that impact, and may we use our own Kol Dmama Daka to impact others.
Thank you.